Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the Push 3 Standalone, and specifically we're going to talk about the USB host port and what all MIDI stuff you can connect to it. I know it can do typical things like synths and drum machines over USB, but we're going to try a few atypical things. Also, I'm going to show you one trick I've figured out with the ADAT port using with my modular. So stay tuned, here we go. All right, so here we are. So if you don't know, the Push 3 has a USB host port, just like on a USB-A connector. It's also got a USB-C port, which is for connecting it to the computer to use as a controller / interface. And it's got a 3.5 millimeter MIDI in and out, ADAT audio in and out, and a stereo pair in and out on 1/4 inch. I believe they're balanced connectors. It also has these two pedal inputs. You can use those with expression pedals and such, or with the adapters, which I have some here. So with any adapter, but here's the Ableton ones that take the stereo plug to two 3.5 mil jacks, and you can use CV and gate through settings on there. But today what we're talking about is the USB port and what it can and can't do. So if you don't already know, as of now, it cannot host audio interfaces or audio devices, just MIDI. That could always change. I'm on 12 point something live suite right now, right before 12.1 came out. So I think that's probably a possibility, but I have no idea. So right now what I have plugged in is a USB hub. It's just a little powered hub I got off Amazon. And probably the simplest thing plugged into it, I have my IK Multimedia iRig keys, which is just a little keyboard MIDI controller plugged into the hub here. And then I'll show you the screen on the switch here in a second, how all this stuff shows up. And the other thing I've plugged in, which is probably the coolest thing, which I highly recommend, is this little orange box. And it is from retrokits.com. It's called the RK006. And in its simplest form, if you plug a USB cable into it, in this case, I'm hooking it to this hub, so it's hosting, the Push 3 is hosting it. It's a MIDI interface. And all the inputs and outputs are on 3.5 millimeter jacks. Now, like I said, that's the simplest form. So that's 2 inputs and 10 outputs. It can also do stuff like if you don't plug a host into it, it just works as like a through device. So like whatever comes in automatically goes out, all 10 outputs, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you could use that too. You could just take this MIDI output into the input and then have like 10 copies of it or whatever. But the RK006 can do tons of cool stuff. I think you can use some of the outputs as gates and stuff. But yeah, check out retrokits.com. It's really cool. So I have that plugged into the host port. So that basically gives an external MIDI interface of 2 MIDI ins and 10 MIDI outs to the Push, in addition to the ones built in. So that's cool. And right now I have that, looks like 5 of them hooked up. They go to things like, one of them's going to this Moog here. That's the Labyrinth. I just have it hooked up for MIDI sync at the moment. I got one of the outputs going to a DIN MIDI adapter into the delay here, so it syncs. I've got 2 of them going to like the Dreadbox Erebus and Hades reissues. I think I have another one going to DIN to the Korg drum log for synchronization. So, I mean, you can use it for whatever. That's just how I have it hooked up right now. So let me show you on the Push 3 screen how all this shows up here in a second. The one last thing I was going to show you, and this is really cool, and I kind of like was deep diving into the manual on Ableton's website, but you can actually plug a USB to Ethernet adapter into the USB port and have wired internet, which I did, and I bought this adapter. I'll put a link in the description. It's just some, USB to Ethernet thing off of Amazon, but I actually emailed Ableton tech support to ask if there's a specific one, and this is the one they said they were using. And with that, you don't have to have the Wi-Fi on, and it does still show up on the computer. So like if I open Ableton Live and we're on the same network, on the same switch, it shows up just like you have it plugged in, so you can transfer files, like open the projects from the Push 3 on the computer and such. And the biggest thing for me is the updates on the switch over Wi-Fi kind of take forever, and this really speeds it up. So that's a cool little thing I did not know at all about when I bought this. Okay, so let's go back to the screen, and I'll show you how all these MIDI devices show up on the screen. Okay, back to the front of the Push 3. Just to clarify what I said earlier, so the USB port does not host audio devices that would be like audio interfaces or synths that carry audio over USB or whatever. It just hosts class compliant MIDI, as far as I know, because I didn't really say that before. So basically, if you go into settings and then the MIDI tab, I hope you can see the screen. I tried to zoom in. This is showing inputs, and that's showing the outputs. So on the output screen, you'll see the user port, the external port, and then you'll see all those things I have connected. So scroll here. So as you can see, iRig keys, which is this, shows up. It's got the RK006 as like an out all, I guess. I don't really know what that means. I guess maybe to output all of them, the ports at once. I have no idea. And then all 10 MIDI outputs. And then likewise on the inputs, it's got the iRig keys, whereas obviously the iRig keys output doesn't make any sense because it doesn't do anything, but it has to be there. And then it's got the RK006 out all and out 1 and 2. And those are the MIDI inputs coming into the device. So you could use those for whatever on a track-by-track basis, output sync. Through the settings, you can say, like, if I want like the keyboard to always be controlling track 3, you can set that up too, or you can have the keyboard controlling whatever the active track is. It's kind of whatever. I won't get into that in this video. There's probably other things about how to do that out there. So basically, this is the stuff I've been using and I know how to use. Next up, I'm going to show some MIDI devices and we're going to try them out. Most of these I have not tried, so we'll see if they work at all. And if they do, what it's capable of whenever we do it. So here we go. Okay, so here's kind of a more typical use for the USB MIDI. I've got my Korg drum log plugged in with USB cable. And in settings, we've just got the drum log sound output turned on sync and track. And then I went to a MIDI track and turned on the MIDI output to the drum log, channel 10, which is what that's on. On here, I set sync to USB MIDI. So when I push play on here, it starts like so. And then also this responds to MIDI notes to play the drum parts. So they're kind of spread out weirdly on this thing. But anyway, you can see they're firing away here. So that would be kind of a typical way to use it. You could use it with something like a synth that has a USB port. Like I've got my modal synth or my Prophet Rev 2 over there. Both of those you could plug straight in or through a USB port to do MIDI and then bring the audio back in if you wanted to. Next up, we're going to try something I actually haven't tried before. I'm going to plug it into the iConnectivity Mio XM on my desk, which is in turn connected to everything else in the room. So theoretically, with some fancy routing on here and then routing on there, I could control any synth in the room, theoretically. Okay, it is plugged in, and the screen changed. So we're looking at the MIDI outputs screen. And sure enough, not only did all the outputs show up, but they're named what I named them in iConnectivity's software. That is really cool. I had no idea it would do that. Okay, so give me a second and I will try to get it to control something on the other side of the room to see if it works. Of course, I do that through RTP MIDI, which I have a whole other video about that. It's a popular one. Just check it out in my videos. So give me just a second. We'll come back. Okay, easy peasy. I did it. So I just chose the output on the Mio XM labeled rack synths, which I had to look at my spreadsheet, of course. Rack synths is over here. MIDI channel 1 is the Super 6, blue guy there. And then I turned that on, turn on track and sync. Then if you go to the input output settings, I just set this track up for that output, that channel, and the input just from the push, and voila. And it does, the pressure is kind of the mod wheel. And this, the slider deal is the pitch bend. But also if you choose a patch that's got an arpeggiator like this, see it doesn't do anything because it's waiting for sync, but if I hit play, it works. So that's actually really cool. The only thing I wish I could do is hook two USB devices to this interface at the same time. That would allow me to have this kind of on the desk as my computerless, which it is a computer, I know, my computerless sequencing setup, because I'm kind of getting away from using my pyramid, to be honest. I never got on with it that well for the editing, and I've used Ableton Live forever, since version 5 actually, so that is forever. So anyway, this is a possibility. I mean, one possibility is the old iConnectivity Mio 10, this one here, which is over here, actually does accept two host devices at the same time, weirdly. So I could just plug it into that, and via all the RTP stuff on there, theoretically route it to everything, and like make presets for within the Push 3 for all the devices I'd ever want to use set to the right port and right channel. That's a possibility. I may consider that in the future. So that's cool. I didn't know that was going to work so well. So let's move on and try something else now. Okay, I'm back. We have moved over to the other side of the room where the modular is, and I've precariously set the Push 3 on a swivel stool. Really smart. So like I said before, it does not host audio devices. So I have an Expert Sleeper's ES8 audio interface here. So if I plug that into the USB port, like so, the light lights up as if it does have a host connected to it, which that is interesting. I don't know what that's all about. But as you can see, you can't do anything, though, with that piece of information. I mean, if you go to the audio, I mean, it's not like new stuff shows up. So no surprises there. MIDI, obviously nothing shows up because it's not a MIDI device. So that doesn't do anything, and that's no surprise whatsoever. But I do have a trick I read about, and I'm going to try out now. So let me go get some cables. I'll be right back. Back to this setup. So the ES8 doesn't work as an audio interface. No big surprise there. But this is not MIDI related. I just thought I'd show you anyway. So if you take the ADAT output right there and plug it into the ADAT input of the ES8, and do not connect a USB host to it, so I unplugged the computer, nothing's hosting it, it kind of defaults to a mode where it's a like ADAT to audio, analog audio interface kind of thing. So for example, this is out of here. I just have a synth loaded here like a operator, And then I went to output settings and I changed the audio to output to external. And then I'm assuming 1 through 8 are like the internal outputs. It has to group them in 8 for some reason. But so like 9, 10 would be output 1 and 2 of the ES8, 11, 12, 3, and 4. So if I play here, you'll see, look, ha ha ha, outputs 3 and 4 are lighting up. And if I bump it up to 15, 16, output 7 and 8 should light up. All this other stuff does too, because that's an ES8 thing. But that's not related. So anyway, that's a cool thing. I know like Expert Sleepers just came out with an ES10 that just does this exact thing. It's just like 8-AT input, 8-AT output to, their 3.5 mil jacks. And the cool thing is these are DC coupled, so you can use them for audio or CV and gate. So what one could do is if you hooked up the 8-AT out of that into the 8-AT end of this, then you've got like a 4 analog in, 8 analog out that you could play with audio and CV. So one could set up a track in here with the CV tools. So you're outputting CV and gate on a couple channels, going to some, synth thing in the Euro rack, goes back in as audio, returns into here as audio, and you got like a self-contained sequencer, etc., that you could use up to several things. I'm not going to demonstrate that right now because I could only find one optical cable. But anyway, you get where I'm coming from here. It works as a great expander. I mean, this 8-AT jack, that's kind of what's intended for anyway. There's a bunch of devices out there that will convert it to like 8 ins and 8 outs on 1/4 inch or what have you, or mic pre's or whatever. So, I could just as well connect it to one of my audio interfaces, 8-AT connections, just to expand it somehow if it had that ability. So anyway, another cool little thing you can do, making flashy lights. Sorry, not much music in this video, but it's mostly all showing how things could work. Okay, so for my next test, the MIDI devices have to be class compliant. I have an old Novation Launchpad, the OG. I have a black one too, but here's the white one. They are not class compliant. So if we plug this into here, I don't think anything's going to happen, because also I think it needs too much power, but we're about ready to find out. I have no idea. If I can get the cord turned the right way. So there's no power. Oh, there is power, though it's okay. So let's go to settings and see if anything appeared. MIDI. Oh, it is there as an input and as an output. That's really surprising. Okay, well, let's turn on the input and see if it does anything. We'll go back to like just a blank screen here. And gosh, it's been so long since I've used this. Oh, look at that. It's working. So this is like note mode or whatever, user 1, the default. And it's just, it's playing in notes. Huh. Okay. Wonder if you can launch clips. Let me load up something with clips. Let's see if it has any clips. Dang, dude, it shows up. Look at that. And if I push launch, let's see if I can get them both. Huh. Launching. Let's see if I can stop them. Wowzers, look at that. A Novation Launchpad Mark 1 OG does work, just plugged straight into the Push 3. Now, there's already 64 buttons here, so, I don't know why you would need that. But, you could think of some reasons, like if you had this set up in user mode with some specific MIDI mappings, that might be useful. I've done that before in our live sets. So that's really surprising. So here, I'll just load a different song. I love how the Push names the songs for you. That's the funniest thing ever. This is Waning Approach. I just let it name it itself because it's cool. Let's see. There's one clip, and sure enough, there it shows up. Now, if I load like a big set, so let's just do that for the heck of it. This is like I was working on doing my Made Back stuff live. So this has a whole bunch of clips, and sure enough, you zoom out here a bit. If I launch here, it launches there. And if I launch here, it launches there. And I didn't change any settings. It's just right out, plugged straight in. So pretty cool. I totally did not expect that to work. Okay, next thing we're gonna try is plugging in the Rolly Seaboard block. This is a squishy MPE keyboard. This is the original version, doesn't have the MIDI out, but it just has MIDI over Bluetooth or USB. This doesn't have Bluetooth, but who cares? So I plugged the USB. I first went on to Rolly's app on the computer and configured it to make sure it's set up as an MPE, because you can change the way it works. And then I just hooked a USB cable to that, to the host port. And it works. So in settings, as you can see, MIDI input and output, it shows up. Output doesn't really matter. Input, there it is. And I push the MPE button so it knows it's an MPE device. So now we can just add an MPE device here. We'll just go to sounds. Let's just pick one and see how it works. So here's what it sounds like. It's doing the MPE thing. You know, so this just automatically works as well. And it does all the MPE stuff. The pressure and the sliding, and it is polyphonic. I tested that out. So actually that was a really easy thing to do. I mean, these pads are awesome. Not entirely sure. I mean, I guess if you wanted more of a traditional keyboard look, though the Rolly is kind of hard to get used to too. So if that's your preference, it's an easy thing to do. You can just plug it in. And I'm assuming it would work with the bigger Rollys also. All right, on to the next thing. Okay, so for this next one, this is a pretty fun one. I have the Super 6 by UDO, and it can respond to MPE. So I plugged it in over MIDI USB, and basically in settings, MIDI input doesn't matter, and MIDI output, I just turned it on to track. So then if you go to your track and then go to the input output settings, the input, I just have the touchpad here, and the output I set to the Super 6. One of the keys to making this work is you set the MIDI channel, scroll all the way past 16 and change it to MPE. And then on the Super 6, basically it turns MPE on a per patch basis. So I just found one that was polyphonic and I turned it on. It's like Shift MPE and then the first button solid. So it's in the manual, but it works. So I'll try to play one-handed here, but as you can see, the slide, pressure, and sliding up and down on the pad works. And you know, you can play polyphonically and slide individually. Yeah, that top note I'm sliding. So anyway, that's cool. And I guess likewise, I could plug this back in with the USB hub and use this or the Push 3 to play this Super 6. So there you go, MPE stuff going on the Push 3. Okay, there we go. So there's a bunch of examples of MIDI stuff and various other things I plugged into it. There's a lot more I could try. If you're interested in something specific, let me know in the comments. Maybe I can make a part 2. I've got some older MIDI gear I could try with it, effects pedals, all that kind of stuff. So thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe. Bye.